afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to another Propagandacast Lehr and your host, Imperial Dane, master of, well, Lehr, instruction and knowledge. Today's topic is going to be the 234-2, aka the Puma, the Wehrmacht heavy armoured car, which certainly seems some slight modifications over the time, but it has now become, I think, a prominent part of the Wehrmacht metagame once more, so I think a bit of a refresher there. Wouldn't hurt overall for a lot of players. In many ways, the Puma sort of is an interesting heavy armoured car within the Axis force. I mean, there's also, of course, the Oberkommand West one. They're roughly the same. Of course, the Wehrmacht one is requiring a doctrine. Oberkommand West one requires you to actually go for the mechanized regiment. Overall, the Puma, though, is a heavy armoured car, which is one of the few armoured cars that can actually threaten even medium armour, which rather, of course, makes it pretty good. It can also deal with infantry. To an extent, it might not be quite as good as an anti-infantry specialist, but overall, the Puma armoured car is, in many ways, a very flexible piece of work that can actually, put quite some pressure on your opponent if well handled. Of course, emphasis on armoured car. Unlike, say, a tank, though, it can actually take a lot of hits. So it does require a lot more smarter manoeuvring than, say, a tank, because, I mean, if they get caught up by paramount tank guns or anything like that, they'll quickly fall apart. So, I mean, they're not exactly tank substitutes. They will see some players actually using a bunch of them, because they do have one advantage over most medium armor. They have longer range and still decent penetration, plus rate of fire means they can, again, threaten armor, and while they might not penetrate heavy hits, the rate of fire they possess allows them that way to overcome medium armor if your opponent isn't careful with the medium armor. So in this regard, the Puma is in that probably a higher skill vehicle in the hands of some players that requires a bit more management, generally operating a large amount of armoured cars well, but it can certainly have an impact and can allow you to play more different than just, say, going for tanks or tank destroyers, so that way take on your enemy armor. In the case of the Wehrmacht, it's not uncommon to see it paired up with the command tank to allow them to soak up a few more hits, which does make it slightly more tanky, but overall it'll still go down pretty fast, so that is worth keeping in mind when utilising the Puma. Also worth keeping in mind, the Puma is not very good versus heavy armor. It's sort of alright versus medium armor. The problem is, as soon as the armor, level increases on most of the armor there, the Puma very much quickly falls short. So even versus, say, premium medium tanks like the EC-8 or the Comet, it begins running into some issues. That's also, I think, very important to keep in mind while utilising the Puma. It doesn't work against everything, and of course it does have counters, like, again, heavier armor. In those situations, you definitely need to take up to go for some other options. But otherwise, when your opponent just relies a lot on regular medium armor, the Puma can actually do quite good. It, of course, also works well versus other sort of light vehicles. In fact, it performs quite well. On top of that, you usually get smoke with it, either doctrinally or if you're the Oberkommand West, otherwise. It now has target weak point or another ability that works similarly. That way, also allowing you to gain a slight edge in any sort of armor engagement. That way, if you utilize the Puma correctly. So in that regard, the Pumas do have a lot of flexibility and utility, but again, they do require more management. On top of that, the veterancy is pretty good. In particular, the veterancy 3 bonus increases the damage overall done, meaning they can really threaten medium armor, but also to an extent infantry. So I mean, a veterancy 3 Puma is actually quite, a nice thing to have. And of course, for the Oberkommand West, it becomes even better. The veterancy 4, veterancy 5 becoming that way even nasty, even fast and swift, and just, a real piece of work. On top of that, it is still a reconnaissance vehicle, so it can also be used to spot ahead for other vehicles. That way, I mean, it can itself, make use of its longer range, but also that way allow your other units to make use of their, full range in certain cases, like, say, a Panther or a Stug. So in that regard, the Puma also pairs up well with other long-range vehicles. So it actually has a lot of utility, and thusly a lot of purpose and a lot of strength. And again, for the Oberkommand West, you can much more easily sort of fit into your force. Whereas for the Wehrmacht, you do have to choose a doctrine, which does limit your options. You can't, for example, easily pair up the Puma with, say, a Tiger tank or an Elephant tank. So, on the other hand, with your Panthers, your Sturmpanzers, your Stugs, whatever, you can sort of work the Puma together with those, sort of get a bit more out of them in the right circumstances. So the Puma is overall, I think, a very flexible vehicle that serves a lot of purposes, depending on what purpose you actually want to do it, and can, again, fulfill a lot of roles just, on the run. But it should not be seen as a tank substitute. It will definitely fail in those parts. For example, it's not a very good assault vehicle. You very much have to rely on its range in a lot of situations. But it can sort of provide a fire support role. It can threaten medium armor, which is definitely not bad. So it can sort of, act as a, shall we say, Ersatzpanzerjäger. And it can, of course, threaten infantry reasonably well as well. So again, flexible vehicle, and certainly something to keep in mind with. Its counters are heavier armor, lots of anti-tank weapons, like, say, anti-tank guns, which it can't itself deal with very well, and infantry with anti-tank weapons. Medium army, you're going to need either something more premium, you're going to have to get numbers out to that way deal with the Pumas. Otherwise, the Pumas can just stay at range and just, kite your tank to death. So that's something worth keeping in mind, that if your opponent does go for Pumas, you absolutely know where your options and how to deal with them. But again, they can be dealt with. You dig in well with some anti-tank guns and some mines in that regard, a bit like the 2-2. If you can destroy the mobility of the 2-2 with mines or any sort of snare, it does also become a lot easier to target. And of course, that's also worth keeping in mind for those using it. Be careful where you drive it. If it gets stuck in any position, it's very likely toast. So I'd say that sort of covers things here for the 234-2, aka the Puma. Again, nice, flexible vehicle, and again, one that has been seeing, I think, a definite resurgence here in the meta as of late. Lastly, again, I think, making it not a bad idea, I think, to make a video just to refreshing people on that, how to get the most out of it, but also to fight it. Remember, mobility, but otherwise, heavy armor and anti-tank positions tend to give it a really rough time. So hopefully this has been a help for you. Hopefully this will help you either get more out of your Pumas or fighting the Pumas. If you haven't subscribed, like, share, comment. And of course, like we do consider donating or pledging on Patreon. Links are in the video description. This is Imperial Dane signing off. You're all a wonderful audience. Bye.